What's up, YouTube? I know it's been a while. I'm just here in the car in the garage. I did film this video previously driving around, but now we're back in the garage because upon review, the audio was pretty crappy. I haven't been making a lot of videos mainly because I've been pretty busy with work and life and all that. But I thought I would do this video, which is going to be my car history. I've seen a couple other YouTubers do car history videos, and I thought it would help give you guys some perspective on my experiences and the cars I've owned, so that if I'm reviewing a car or something, maybe you can think about where my perspectives are coming from, because that's important when you're listening to people's reviews, because what people have owned and stuff would really change how they view certain cars. Like if your guy that's reviewing cars only own Hondas, then he would probably be biased to Hondas. So with that said, let's talk about my car history. It's not very long, but I'm going to tell some stories that I remember when I had those cars. So starting from the top, my first car I ever owned was a Acura Legend 1995 GS 6-speed. You guys probably don't know too much about that car. The Acura Legend, of course, was never like a sports car or anything like that, but this one was a 6-speed manual sedan. Now that's pretty rare. They have 5-speed manuals, and those are kind of common. But this one was a 6-speed. It was, I think, one of 600, and I think it's the first production 6-speed Japanese car. Actually, if I have that information correct, I think I read that when I owned the car. I mean, this is before like the R33, I think, is still 5-speed. But anyway, I think this was the first 6-speed Japanese car, so that's pretty notable. The car, I got it because it was my first car, and my parents gave me a budget of $3,000. I really at the time wanted an Integra or Civic, typical like high school dream car. I wanted like a B18C EG hatch or something, but after a couple test drives, my dad said it was too fast. So I ended up looking for the most power I could get for the money, and still looking at Acura and Honda because I thought those would be reliable. More on that later. So I got this Acura Legend 6-speed. The car has 230 horsepower and I think 230 torque, so it was actually pretty quick. So as far as memories of the car, back in high school, it was mainly just typical high school things. So like we used to drag race. We used to like drag race down like this one-way road by a tennis court, and the Legend actually would beat a lot of things. It was faster than like my friend's stock WRX, but I don't think he knew how to launch. He'd always bog it with all-wheel drive. And it's faster than like the small Mercedes compressor. And ironically, it beat all those D and B series Hondas. Granted, they're like the B18B, like the LS. But yeah, I mean, it really shows the difference in engine displacement, because it was a 3.2 liter and it was a 6-speed manual still. And usually I drive alone, so the car isn't working very hard. But anyway, maybe a year or two goes by. I'm like sophomore in high school. The engine's head gasket blows. If you guys read up on Acura Legends, which I don't think you ever will, they're known to seep and blow head gaskets. So the head gasket blew. It had 90,000 miles at that point. And then instead of selling the car for under $1,000, I thought it would be a good idea to swap in the 3.5 RL motor, which is a common swap for that car. And I thought it would increase the value because the car is rare, and it actually did. So I drove the car engine swap for a bit. It was getting like check engine lights just for the cat, and at the time, I was just tired of dealing with all the check engine lights and problems, and I wanted a platform that I can start tinkering with, not like a full-size luxury sedan. So I ended up selling it, and with the motor swap, I sold it for $6,500. So that's a profit of $3,500 from the original price. So I gave the extra money to my dad, the difference, because he also helped with the engine swap. And then I ended up getting a 5th gen Honda Prelude, which is the BB6. It was the base model. I got that one for I think $3,700, if if I remember correctly, it had like 170,000 miles. So this was like my first like VTEC like sporty car that you can actually like toss around in the corners. So that's what I did. Growing up, I've always been a fan of WRC and the hot version videos. So naturally, when I was able to get a 5-speed sporty Honda, it's not like the fastest one out of the box, but it was still quick. It was a 2.2 liter, so it pulled pretty well and it handled really nice. It's one of the best handling front-wheel drive cars. Of course, I know that because at the time, whenever you get a car, you always research it, and the Prelude was like top handling. I think it was Car and Driver under 25,000 or something, but the car handled amazing. What did I do to that car? So I ended up putting wheels and tires from my uncle that used to race a Honda Civic Si 06, but he sold the car, so he just had these wheels. They're like Rota's Circuit 10s. They were like Mugen replicas, but they had Goodyear Eagle F1 tires, so they were pretty sticky for the time. And then I put I think they're called S-Tech lowering springs on it, and that's about it. I put some ugly polyurethane lip on it, and from there I would just drive on back roads. Notable stories. I think the most notable story was because I was really learning to push the car in corners this time, and being dumb and young. There's this on ramp. I remember was with my friend, and then there's this on ramp that goes around, like it goes in a big circle to loop back the other way. Like you could be going, I think, from west to south or something. But anyway, it's like this big circle on ramp. So I thought it would be a good idea, of course, to attack the on ramp at like 70 plus in the rain. And I remember braking and then lifting off. And because all the weight is in the front and there's like nothing in the rear on a Prelude, all the weight shifted to the front and I got lift off oversteer. It's like my first experience with like severe lift off oversteer in the rain. So I was just flailing at the wheel and I caught it and I brought it back and I actually held it and I used the gas to pull it straight because it was at like a really, really sharp angle, like almost spinning out, and I just mashed the gas to pull it forward because I played enough Gran Turismo to know that. Um, but yeah, that was a really scary experience, but I played it off cool because I was with my friend. So you have to look cool in high school, right? So I caught that slide, and that's one of the biggest notable stories of that car. Um, what else did I do with that car? I took it to prom. I remember I had Schroth 3-point harnesses, and I just remember my date not being very happy about that because it would ruin her dress, and she also wasn't happy when we were like topping out the car against my friend, and I knew she's not the one. But yeah, that's all I remember about the Prelude. Um, so how did I get rid of the Prelude? I ended up going to college, and I went to the dorms, and the parking was expensive, so I left the Prelude at my parents' house, and then my um, dad was driving it around one day, and it got totaled. It got hit by a Suburban, and the whole rear got destroyed, so I ended up writing that one off, and insurance gave more than it was worth, which is good, but at the same time, I was kind of devastated about it because it was like the first modified car I was driving. Obviously not that modified, but so moving on to the next car, which is probably the most notable. So after the Prelude is when I got my SW20 or SW21 if you want to be specific, because it was an NA hardtop chassis and like the most basic one. Like there's no power steering, no ABS, no power windows, no AC, and but it was swapped with a second Gen 3S GTE with a CT20B turbo off the later 3S and then a full exhaust intake. And yeah, so during my time owning it, I put a boost controller. I imported some coilovers from Up Garage, and I made that mistake because they probably needed to be rebuilt. They're 10 HAs, and yeah. And then I got all seasons on Koseis. So at this time, I don't think I really knew. So all the memes I make, like, pretty much are about me growing up with cars. No idea what a good tire is. All the bushings sucked. Like, there was probably like this much play on the center with the SW20. So, but I have to say, this car taught me so much about driving, mainly because it was mid-engine, and there are always the internet rumors of snap oversteer and like, oh, this car's so hard to drive. And of course, I didn't know this until I bought it. I just bought it because I like Initial D and I know what an MR2 is, but I never researched before buying it that it's supposed to be tricky to drive. So I had this MR2 with really crappy bushings and a lot of power and crappy tires. And I've had the most memories with that car. So being that I was in college, during college I started the car club there, and I started and I was the president. So I met a ton of my friends at the SW20 because I would bring it out to the center square of the university, which is like where you see all the frats and stuff and student clubs. And there's me with the MR2 Turbo. And every time there's a passing period, I would turn it on and I would rev it, and so many people would come to see what the club was about or the car is about. And during this time, I met this dude named William, who I'm sure you guys have seen on my autocross videos and stuff. He's the one with the M3. And then from meeting him, I found out he was really into Toge and a hot version. So we ended up going Toge like almost every night, maybe, like during school. After studying, we would like go there daily, and he had like a 540i 6-speed and like the same M3, but it was like a shell, and he was building that. But yeah, we would go Toge like every night, and I learned so much about driving with the SW20 and with my crappy tires and like probably some of the worst handling characteristics ever. Like the SW20 is a great car, but with my budget and knowledge back then, it probably wasn't the best handling. And it wasn't the best handling, but it taught me a lot. Like my reactions are so much quicker, and every car seems pretty easy to drive after that one. So how did I get rid of that car? I graduated and I got my first job, and during the time the R32s are becoming legal, so of course I thought it would be a good idea to import an R32. I also worked for a supply chain and shipping company, so everything was falling together for me to import a car on my own, and that's what I did. I ended up importing the R32 Skyline GTST, and yeah, so naturally, being in the US, I was really hyped to own a Skyline GTST or a Skyline anything or right-hand drive, right? Because in the US, we are screwed by this 25-year-old law, where the car has to be 25. So the Skyline was legal, and we've never had them in the US, and I had one of the earlier ones. So naturally, when I got the car, I had big expectations from all the video games like GTST. I know it's not a GTR, and I, like everyone else that thinks, even now, they like to compare the GTST to the GTR like it's anywhere remotely close, but it's actually not. So GTST, in my experience, got so much attention. People would take photos. If you look in the rearview mirror, everyone has their phone out. People are pointing, and everyone wants to know your Instagram. Everyone wants to get to know you. And yeah, like the attention was cool, but when you know the car is not fast and there's nothing to show, I really don't like that feeling. And it's one of the reasons why I drive the cars now, but we'll get into that later. So this car just had a bunch of like clout, and everyone loved the R32, but when you get over the hype and you own one yourself, it's really just a 25-year-old Nissan with a RB20. Like the RB20 is really smooth. It was an awesome daily driver. It was really easy to drift. It had a two-way diff, a boost controller, and like a clutch. I think it was definitely an amateur drift car in Japan, but I mean, it handled really well, and it was really progressive and losing grip. But in autocross and in Toge, it was not competitive at all. Like I could drive my brother's 1.6 Miata, and I would beat that Skyline so bad, like on Toge and autocross. Even on high speed, like the stability of the Miata was still like sustained speeds way faster in corners than the Skyline, and that's something that I really liked about the Miata. It's my brother's Miata, so it's not part of the car list. So after that, getting over the hype of the Skyline, I actually owned the Skyline for only 4 months. That's how disappointed I was. And you know, people might get upset, but I bought the car and owned it, and I experienced it, and it was a good experience, but I was disappointed by it. And it was actually running really well, so there's nothing wrong with it. It just wasn't up to my hyped up expectations. So now, in that ownership time is when we're really getting into autocross with my friends. So I sold the Skyline and I got an S2000, knowing that it's one of the best handling cars in Japanese car history. So got an AP1 S2000. Um, Now we're pretty well versed in setting up cars. By we, I mean like my friends and I. We really focus on handling now. So with S2000, I've made a full video. Go check that out on my channel. I basically set it up with good tires, Bilstein suspension, front sway bar, oil baffle pan, AP2 retainers, every like basic S2000 thing. So that car's set up to handle really well, and it does handle really well. So yeah. So how did I end up with the MRS? Um, well, so during this time in autocross, my buddy Hien, who's the guy that helped swap the MR2, he got the MR2 Spider first, and he had a 1ZZ, and then he blew it up at autocross, right? Like, I already drove it with the 1ZZ, and I was really impressed already with, like, the turn-in, the handling, the stability. It was, like, all the good things of, like, the light turn-in of the SW20 with, like, the most stability I've ever felt in a car. And it just really was so easy to drive and push with the 1ZZ. And it really wasn't that slow with the 1ZZ. It was like a faster Miata, and it just handled so well, and I was really impressed. Like, there are very few cars where I've gotten and driven, and I was like, wow, this is something else. And that was with the MR2. Like, other cars that I've been really surprised, like I've been R35 GTR, Z06, like 400 wheel horsepower Evo. Those all impressed me with power, but like as far as handling, just turning the MRS for the first time in Hien's car, I was like, wow, this is something else. So eventually he blew up that 1ZZ, and then he 2ZZ swapped his, and then that's when I was like, yo, this is way faster and cheaper than an S2000. Of course, I'm sure a lot of guys watching this are gonna be like, that's not true, or it's debatable, but I own both of them, and I drive them really hard in the same circumstances, same tires. This isn't a comparison of like the Jays Racing versus TPS. Like, owning both cars set up by the same person with like the same tires and mentality, the MRS is way faster for the price. So that's the car I'm in now. And you guys know the rest of that story. The MRS combines like all the good experiences I've had and the things I've liked in my past cars into one, basically, and that's how I would describe it best. I always liked cars with really sharp turn in. I really liked mid-engine, but there was something about the SW20 that just wasn't as nimble as the S2000 or the Miata, but this like combines like S2000 and like mid-engine and like really lightweight handling like the Miata. So it puts together all the stuff that I like, and that's why I have an MRS now. But let's see. I think that's all. Oh, I actually had a 1990 Suzuki Carry, the K truck. You guys, I have a review on my channel. You guys should check that one out. I bought a Suzuki Carry in tandem with the Skyline. Actually, they came in at the same time. The Carry was 800 bucks, and I got it because my friend and I wanted to start a food truck, and I still low-key want to start a food truck, but we couldn't get past the permitting, and I didn't have that much money to pay the permitting. Like, it was like $200 an hour for them to inspect stuff, and we had no idea what we were doing, like designing a food truck from scratch. But in hindsight, I think I have a better idea of what to do. But yeah, that Carry was just so slow, but it was so fun, and it got more attention than a supercar. You guys should definitely check out that review. But anyways, that's my car history. Hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of history of where I come from and my car experiences. It should help give you guys perspective on my opinions and stuff of owning these cars and reviewing cars. So more videos to come, and I will see you guys in the next one. I'm gonna try to make more videos, I'm gonna try to make more technical videos, but video blogs are easier because I just get to speak what I have to say without stopping the camera and setting up to show you guys. But don't worry, those tutorials and stuff won't go away, but I'm gonna see if I can mix both of them up together. So until the next one, guys, see ya.